So genomic sequencing, it's completely changing medicine, right? But here's the catch, and it's a big one. As this incredible technology moves out of the lab and into your doctor's office, we're faced with a really tough question. How do we figure out what it's actually worth? Trust me, it's not as simple as just slapping a price tag on it. So let's dive in and unpack this.
I mean, really think about this for a second. How do you put a price on a diagnosis, especially one you've been searching for years? Or what about the value of just knowing? The peace of mind that comes with understanding a potential health risk for you or your family? These are the real human benefits we're talking about with genomics. And our old ways of measuring value, well, they just can't capture this stuff.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the core problem of value. Then we'll get into something called genomic utility. We'll see how we can actually measure what matters, check out how different countries are handling this in the real world, and then we'll look at a really cool idea, a healthcare system that actually learns. And finally, we'll zoom out to the bigger picture.
Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, the problem of value. And the subtitle here says it all, why all yardsticks don't measure up. Because that's the heart of the issue, right? Our traditional ways of evaluating new medical tech, they just weren't designed for something as complex and far-reaching as genomics.
And here's exactly why. If you look on the left, you've got the conventional way of thinking. It's pretty narrow. It's mostly stuck on direct health benefits for the patient and, whether it makes the system more efficient. But genomics, it's a whole different ballgame. Its impact just ripples outwards, touching everything. That's why we need this extended framework you see on the right, one that looks at overall well-being, how it affects the entire family, and something that's absolutely critical, equity.
So to really get a grip on this much wider sense of value, experts came up with a whole new concept, and that brings us right to Section 2, more than just health. We're going to introduce a really important idea here called genomic utility.
So what is genomic utility? Well, think of it as the umbrella term, the whole shebang that captures all the different ways a genomic test creates value. It goes way beyond just the simple medical result. We're talking about everything from your personal peace of mind all the way up to the massive impacts on society as a whole.
Okay, so what does that actually look like in practice? Well, this big idea of genomic utility gets broken down into 5 key pieces. We've got diagnostic, clinical, personal, economic, and societal. Let's take a quick look at what each of these means.
First up, diagnostic utility. Now, this one's interesting because it's not just about getting a, yes, this is the genetic cause. Sometimes the most powerful answer is a no. Ruling out a genetic condition can be huge. It can finally end what doctors call the diagnostic odyssey, that long, exhausting, and expensive journey for answers. And it can point the medical team down a totally different and hopefully correct path. Next, we have clinical utility. This is where the rubber really meets the road. It's all about making that diagnosis actionable. This is the direct line from the test result to a real change in your care. We're talking about getting access to the right precision medicine, finding a clinical trial that could be a game changer, or making those incredibly tough decisions about things like surgery or transplantation.
But it's not all about the clinic, not by a long shot. Let's talk about the personal side of this. A diagnosis can be just profoundly empowering. This quote here really hits the nail on the head. It can validate everything a patient has been feeling, finally giving a name to their experience. And that certainty? Wow. It can unlock the ability to make huge life decisions about a career, where to live, whether to start a family. It's life-changing stuff.
Okay, so this whole concept of genomic utility is great, right? It makes a lot of sense. But how do you actually measure it? How do you put a number on peace of mind? Well, that brings us to Section 3, measuring what matters, and the new toolkit that's been built to do just that.
So to turn all these intangible benefits into something, tangible, researchers have actually developed some really specific tools. For instance, there's C-Guide, which captures what the clinicians think. Then you've got things like GNU and the Prus scale, which are all about assessing the value from the patient's and the family's point of view. And then there's the GUV scale, which is designed to help the people holding the purse strings, the policymakers, weigh all of this to make those big funding decisions.
And when you use these tools, the results are pretty amazing. When you actually ask people, what is this information worth to you, they put a pretty high price tag on it. Just look at this chart. Across a bunch of different studies, people said that getting a genomic diagnosis was worth anywhere from $1,000 to, get this, over $10,000. And in many cases, that's way more than the test itself even costs.
So it's pretty clear that patients see immense value here. But the big question is, How does that translate into actual government policy and insurance coverage? That brings us to Section 4, the real-world gauntlet. We're about to see how different countries are wrestling with these really tough funding decisions.
And spoiler alert, the approaches are all over the map. Take a look. In Australia, they've tried to adapt, but they set the rebate so low that hardly anyone is using the tests, only about 20% of what was expected. Then you have the US, where there's no central system at all. It's basically a lottery that depends entirely on your private insurance plan. But then you look at the UK's National Health Service. They've built this dynamic national directory that gets updated every single year. The result? Over 850,000 tests a year and much more consistent access for everyone.
That UK model really gives us a hint of a better way forward, doesn't it? And that's what Section 5 is all about. This idea of creating a healthcare system that learns. This is a dynamic solution for a technology that is just moving at lightning speed.
The core idea here has a bit of a formal name, Life Cycle Health Technology Assessment, or Life Cycle HTA for short. Now, instead of making a single one-and-done yes or no decision on funding something, this is a continuous process. It's a living system. As the technology gets better and we collect more real-world data on how it's working, the system is constantly reevaluating the value and making adjustments. It just makes sense, right? Basically, it works like a really simple but incredibly powerful feedback loop. Step 1, you implement the new tech. Step 2, you collect the real-world data on how it's going. Step 3, you use that data to continuously reevaluate its value. And Step 4, you adapt your funding and policies based on what you've learned. You rinse and repeat. It's a system that is literally designed to get smarter and smarter over time.
All right, for our final section, let's zoom all the way out and look at the biggest picture. We need to talk about the incredible value that genomics brings that extends far, far beyond the doctor's office.
Because you see, this isn't just a healthcare story, it's an economic story. I mean, check out this number. One major study in the US found that for every single dollar invested in human genomics, the return on that investment was $4.75. And where does that come from? It comes from creating hundreds of thousands of jobs, generating billions in tax revenue, and just fueling this massive engine of biomedical innovation for the future.
And that brings us to our final big question. As genomics becomes a normal part of our lives, are our health systems smart enough to keep up? We know the value is there for patients, for families, for the entire economy. The technology is here, and it's getting better every single day. So the real challenge, the real gauntlet, is no longer the science. It's building health systems that are agile, smart, and brave enough to actually use it for the benefit of everyone.